Good evening. Welcome. The board has been in closed session since 6 o'clock for 4 items. Student disciplinary cases, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. And last, approval of August 22nd, 2017 closed session minutes. Could we rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I forgot to mention there are 7 board members present, none absent. We have an annual public hearing each year, and I'm going to call the public hearing to order. 7 board members present, none absent. We'll do a voice vote for the public hearing. I guess all members in approval of doing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so Chris Welton's here to give an overview of the fiscal year 18 budget. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I first want to just talk about some of the changes that that we've made from the tentative budget that we approved last month. The first change on the revenues is a reduction in corporate personal property replacement taxes. The Illinois Department of Revenue decreased all of the replacement taxes in the state by the 23.84%, which is a reduction of $530,030 to District 205. Then, as far as the state funding, with the new state funding formula and the evidence-based model, there were certain state categorical grants that now were rolled up into general state aid. And so the state generally keeps up with their payments for general state aid. So it will result in the state catching up on in those particular categorical grants from they were 2 quarterly payments delinquent, so we are expecting to get 6 quarters in those particular grants, which results in a net increase of revenues of $1,095,250. So the revenues from the tentative to the final went up $565,220. So just staying with the revenues, the mix of revenues that we have in the school district, 89.07% local, state is 8.05%, and federal is 2.88%. So we are much more reliant on our local revenues than the state averages. Our largest revenue source by far is property taxes at 83.64%. Property taxes are limited to CPI increases, and CPI has averaged 1.4% over the last 5 years. In this budget, we have the second installment of the 2016 extension, which was based on the 0.7% CPI, and the first installment, the June payment on the 17 extension, which will be based on the CPI of 2.1%. The changes from the tentative budget on the expenditure side, we have revised the budget for salaries. We had gotten more information, and we had to added a couple of positions there between tentative and final. So that salaries are up 296,368 from tentative. On the benefits side, we received some good news from the benefit broker. A reduction in our PPO premium of 1.6% and a reduction in the HMO by 0.87%. So that was unexpected. The last renewals, the calendar year 17 renewal was a 7.2% increase. This is on the PPO. The 6 months before that was a 4.2% increase. And then the year before that was an 18.84% increase. And the year before that was a 7.95% increase on the PPO. So we were actually originally budgeting for a 7%. So this was positive for us, reduced expenditures by $425,398. The broker will be in next month to talk in more detail about the renewal. As you know, the PPO 1 plan, the premiums are very high in comparison with our comparable unit districts. So the insurance committee is still discussing potential benefit plan design changes that would be put to a vote in early October. The broker will be here at the second meeting in October, so the renewal will be approved at the second meeting in October, but we'll know the result of the vote on if the staff approves any benefit plan design changes at that time. Then as far as the other accounts, we had some small adjustments were made for our grant amendments that decreased $278,074. So the net decrease in expenditures is $407,104. As you know, the mix of operating expenditures, since we are a service organization, we are mostly salaries and benefits, 63.54% salaries and 13.99% benefits, so 77.53% is all related to staffing. So as far as staffing goes, our total number of positions from 2012, we had 1,073.47 to 1718, which is 1,142.7. So we've increased 69.23 positions in 6 years. So we've averaged adding over 11.5 positions per year over the last 6 years. And then on the following page, this is just related to certified staff position. So of our 71 million in salaries, salaries for base salaries, not including some of the timesheet and stipend work and extracurricular stuff. This is just the base salaries is 71 million. The certified staff is 53.7 million of the 71 million. So this is really where most of the budget is certified staff positions. And certified staff positions are composed of teachers and librarians, social workers, psychiatrists, and counselors. So over this last 6 years, we had 615.3 in 11-12, and in 17-18, 695.2. So it's up 79.9 over the 6 years. So we've averaged adding over 13 certified staff positions per year. These numbers, both the certified and the total staff positions, if we add that additional position, that's not in the budget at this time because it was late. But not that we can't approve it, but it just would be, it's not budgeted for yet. Or it won't be, actually. So then in just the final budget summary, you see that we have revenues of $119,828,800 and expenditures of $121,927,937 in the operating funds, which is a, so the expenditures exceed the revenue by $2,099,137 in the operating funds. As far as the non-operating funds, the debt service fund is just there for collecting property taxes and paying off the debts. So that has a positive 403,754. The capital projects fund, that's the fund that we pay for our summer maintenance projects. The revenues in that fund is $1,000,002 transfer from the operations and maintenance fund into the capital projects fund in order to fund those capital maintenance projects that we do every summer in order to keep our roofs and our blacktops and just to maintain our facilities. So the next steps, we monitor the budget and the actual amounts on a monthly basis. And then also we will be doing 5-year projections coming up. We usually do those in February or so, but we start providing PMA the information about the current budget, the 17 audit, enrollment projections, which we will start on next week because they're based on September 30th, and then scattergram and staffing trends and other assumptions. The auditors will be out here in December to approve the audit report. We'll have the tax levy, the tentative levy in November, the final levy in December. And then we start working on future staffing based on the enrollment projections, and then PMA prepares the 5-year projections. So that's it.
Not to be a broken record, but I would just like to point out that the amount of our deficit is primarily, the primary source of our deficit is the amount of the TIF funds owed to us under the 2014 IGA, which have not been released to us. When we first started this budget, or 2004, I'm sorry. When we started this budget process early last year, this is a process, like Chris said, it's going to kick off very early. We as a board approved a balanced budget. And we approved going down the road towards a balanced budget, but part of the plug that made that balanced at the time, based on the information we knew, was that money. That money's not here, which is why this deficit happened. So I just want to make sure we understand that the board values a balanced budget this year because of circumstances beyond our control. It's run this way, and we will address that issue in the future.
The only clarification that I want to make sure, Chris, is so that the recent legislation, it's not impacting this particular budget.
Well,
correct?
Actually, because it's, and all the other school districts around, everyone is saying that we're going to get 6 quarters this year. It's actually had a positive in that, but that's a one-time catch-up situation where we will get more money this year because of just a timing issue where we're going to catch up on some payments. As we talked about at the last meeting, the evidence-based tier model, we're going to get less than $10,000 out of the $350 million that the state has allocated towards the new evidence-based model. So we're in that tier 1 where you get 0.1% of the $350 million, so that's why we're at like $9,000 for additional funding related to the new formula.
Okay, so, and that means that we don't get any new money
So
from
moving
the state.
forward, we would
Yeah.
expect our state funding to be flat
which then, to Chris's point, makes that even more important.
That's right.
That we get the agreed upon monies, funding, so that we don't continue on a deficit spend now, which is what we have worked toward the last 6 years, is not deficit spending
Right.
or cutting.
Chris, you mentioned staffing increase over the last 5 to 6 years,
Yes.
and I'm wondering if you could just provide any information about how that compares to our enrollment.
I didn't bring up the enrollment numbers, but the enrollment increases are do not nearly compare with the staffing figures. We're hiring more staff than what you would think based on our enrollment. We have had enrollment increases, but they've been small and steady. And I think they're projected to continue to be steady and small increases.
Anything else from board members? No? Go ahead.
Are we still behind, or is the state still behind one payment to us currently?
Currently, yes.
Okay. So I just want to be clear about when you made the earlier comment when I asked you a question, was 6 payments. Can you clarify just so that we're all clear and we're not setting some unrealistic expectation that people think we're going to get more money than realistic? So the state is behind one payment currently in paying us. And then clarify what you said that other districts are.
So they were behind 2 payments at June 30th. So let's say the grant special ed personnel, which is now rolled into the state formula. And that's part of the what they call the base fund minimum. So that money is now coming in equal installments. It's 6.3 million. I had the exact number up last meeting. That is all coming in through the general state aid line. It's no longer coming in through the categorical lines like it used to in the past. And it's coming in equal installments from September through June. They don't fall behind on those general state aid payments because the downstate districts rely on those general state aid for most of their funding. So if the state fell behind in the general state aid payments, those districts wouldn't be able to make their payrolls. So they never fall behind on the general state aid line. Special ed personnel, some of these other categorical grants are now in the general state aid line, which the state can't fall behind on. They made the first quarter payment, or it was the third quarter from last year's payment they made in August. It's expected that they'll make the fourth quarter payment coming up soon, and then they're going to keep up with all those fundings that are now rolled into the general state aid formula. So that's how the 6 quarters. Now, there's a few categorical lines like transportation that are not rolled into that formula. So I only budgeted for 3 quarters in the grants that are not part of the transportation. I only budgeted 3 quarters. And that's why you'll see that the transportation fund is a net loss or expenditures exceeding revenues in this budget because I only budgeted for 3 quarters. I'm not sure that they'll be able to keep up with the payments that aren't in that, rolled into that formula. But, I mean, it's always hard to know what kind of payments we're going to get from the state and when. I've budgeted 4 and gotten 5 and budgeted 3 and gotten 4. It's really hard to know.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Are there any public comments on the public hearing for the budget? Okay, hearing none, we'll adjourn the public hearing and return to the regular meeting. Okay. For regular public comments, we ask that you speak for up to 3 minutes. And the board doesn't respond at this time, but we do respond at a later date. So we will start with Robin Petchel.
Good evening. My name is Robin Petchel, and I have 3 students at Conrad Fisher and a student at Churchville Middle School. I'm here tonight to talk to you about a major safety concern at Conrad Fisher. That concern is the drop-off and pickup of our students. It has over the past few years grown more and more unsafe, particularly for the student walkers at the intersection of Wilson and Victory Parkway. This intersection is where the walking students are told to cross in order to go to our school. As you know, down 1 block further is Churchville Middle School. So as you can imagine, even with the staggered start times, this intersection can get quite busy. Wilson, which our school is on, is a one-way street towards this intersection during school days. But people regularly disobey the signs and drive into the oncoming traffic towards the school. People run the stop signs here, do rolling stops, and several cars are sideswiped each year around this intersection. But all of that is minor in comparison to our students having the right to safely go to and from school. Up until this year, we have had teachers and student patrol officers help monitor this location as it is very busy during arrival and dismissal. That is no longer an option and has become extremely alarming at this intersection. Now, it is my understanding our school does not qualify to have a crossing guard because the school lies in unincorporated Elmhurst. And crossing guards are hired by the city of Elmhurst. So the district chooses to own and operate a school in an unincorporated part of town, but because it is unincorporated, the students do not get access to the same safety precautions that is available to students elsewhere in the district. This is an unacceptable inequality and beyond reckless. It is only a matter of time until something tragic happens to one of our children. Please work with us at Conrad Fisher to help resolve this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tanya Cummings?
My name is Tanya Cummins, and I'm in my 6th year as a parent at Conrad Fisher. I regularly hear distasteful comments about our school from members of this community. No one can control another person's ignorance, but what I find deeply troubling and can no longer silently abide are the school board approved inequities which only further the negative opinions and put our school forever in the position of the have-nots. There have been many serious playground injuries during our time at Fisher. I would have preferred to give hard numbers, but my Freedom of Information Act request was denied within hours. Had there been a safe surface on the playground and not disintegrating mulch, I'm confident that my daughter wouldn't have broken her arm in 2014. Conditions haven't changed, and the district's negligence has to end. When I read that the board had approved a $70,000 donation from Jefferson PTA for their playground, I was, and clearly am still livid. Board policy states that donations are accepted when they, quote, permit the district to work toward equity among its learning centers. There's no argument that can be made that that donation falls under those guidelines. Because we're a school of high poverty, we'll never be able to raise those types of funds, and as such, apparently, our kids are less deserving of a safe area to play. This is district-approved discrimination. I've researched the approved donations from February through June of this year. I stopped tallying when I hit $367,791 in donations, which directly impacted student learning and environment. Every one of those dollars created inequities, and 0 of those dollars came to Fisher. Dr. Moyer was quoted as saying, "The concern about equity of resources comes up. We do have title money that helps balance out resources. And to imply that receiving Title I funds help Fisher approach equality with other elementary schools is misleading at best. A simple solution is to cap the amount of donations to any individual school and to direct donations above that to the District 205 foundations. Many districts have a similar policy. Please revisit your policies and stop actively contributing to the discrimination of our students. We have an amazing advocate in our principal, Jane Bailey, and she works tirelessly to provide our students with the best education possible under the safest conditions, but none of us should have to fight this hard for equity. Racial discrimination in schools has been outlawed, but it's clear that discrimination based on socioeconomic status is alive and well at Elmhurst and supported by this board's policies. I implore you to examine your policies and decisions. Come take a tour of our playground. I'm happy to join any or all of you at a time of your choosing. Please, make the right choices versus the easy ones. It's a message I teach my daughters, and I don't expect less from the board or the district.
Next is Tamika Stutschult. Okay.
Hello. I have been a resident of Elmhurst for 11 years. I'm a parent of a sophomore at York, a sixth grader at Churchville, and a 4-year-old preschooler who may or may not attend Conrad Fisher next year, depending on whether or not some issues relevant to the schools on the north side of Elmhurst are addressed before his scheduled attendance. I honestly don't feel like this district has put the same amount of effort into the quality of the conditions at Conrad Fisher and Churchville. The growing number of unresolved issues are simply turning off prospective families from wanting to attend these schools. Do you know exactly who is currently working as crossing guard at Conrad Fisher so that our children may cross the streets safely through traffic before and after school? I'm sure you don't. The answer is Jane Bailey, our principal. And do you know why? The answer is this: because there is no crossing guard presence at our school, and the teachers who once performed those duties have now stated they no longer want to stand outside and supervise our children. And without Jane, there would be no other adult supervision to assist our student safety patrol at high-volume traffic periods. Well, this is simply unacceptable. If the city of Elmhurst refuses to create positions for crossing guards at Conrad Fisher because the intersections of Victory Parkway and Wilson, as well as the intersection of Diversity and Wilson, are part of unincorporated Elmhurst, then I come here today to see if my school district cares enough about the students of Conrad Fisher to take charge of the situation and hire these very important safety additions. We shouldn't be discriminated against simply because the streets surrounding this school aren't part of Elmhurst proper. These students at Conrad Fisher attend a District 205 school, same as the other approximately 7,500 other District 205 students. And yet again, it's made very clear that the rest of Elmhurst just doesn't care as much about the North Side schools and our safety as much as the more affluent parts of Elmhurst. I also have a real problem with that multi-million-dollar proposal for an already highly satisfactory York auditorium improvement when Conrad Fisher and Churchville don't even have an auditorium to speak of. Yet another example of how I feel like our schools on the north side of Elmhurst suffer from continuous discrimination and neglect. Come and see the commotion at the start and the end of the school day at Conrad Fisher and contemplate the consequences of not having crossing guards at our school. And think about the potential devastation that could ensue without a permanent crossing guard. I'm reaching out to you to come watch 440 students wrangle during lunch recess on an inadequate surface of wood chips on disproportionately small playground for that number of students. Come to our overcrowded assemblies. Come to our school so that you can get a sense of what's going on. Just because many of us don't have the means to simply write a check to independently fund $70,000 projects like other elementary schools in town does not mean that we don't care about our school. We collectively give of our time, our money, and our efforts for many academic and social programs at Fisher that inspire and enhance our children's education. But we also have expectations from our school district to fulfill its obligations to ensure that there is equality among all of its facilities and ensure the safety of all of its students, even the little brown ones on the north side of Elmhurst.
Justin Rand.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Justin Rand, and I have children at York, Bryan, and a third grader at Jackson Elementary. I'm not here to rehash the issues that have been brought up time and time again at these meetings and online about the class size. I'm here to talk about ways we can establish better communication between the parents and the school board. One of the parents, District 205's parents' greatest concerns is the lack of communication between the school board and the parents. We feel that there's a lack of transparency, and we've voiced our concerns in the past about this. We've also voiced our concerns about class size at these meetings, and last week, Concerned Jackson parents put together a petition that's garnered, I believe, over 550 signatures as of this afternoon. And the petition related to the Jackson third grade class, and specifically asked the decision makers of this community to establish a reasonable cap size for the classrooms in all of District 205. This petition is in the direct spirit of District 205's principle of culture, namely that it will strive to create an atmosphere that is, quote, highly collaborative and relationship driven. Unfortunately, rather than act in that collaborative spirit and hold the question and answer session that was originally scheduled for yesterday at Jackson School, Dr. Moyer decided to cancel the meeting due to information about a strong parent reaction that would apparently make civil discourse on the subject impossible without any further explanation to us. As a parent and a taxpayer, I find this unacceptable. We want to make sure that in the future we have a more open engagement with the school board and the parents. First of all, I'd like to thank Principal Trendle, Jackson's Principal Trendle, for opening up the lines of communication. She quickly responded when she became aware of our concerns, and I encourage the board to take some similar steps in the future to listen to the parents and respond quickly. We may come off as intense and hysterical, but I assure you, we only have our kids' welfare in mind. When sufficient information isn't presented and the lines of communication are not established, that's when there's a breakdown, and you end up with meetings with a lot of people come up here to voice their concerns. In the future, please consider hosting more open parent forums, like the one that was supposed to happen last night, and at times more convenient to people that are at work during the day. I know that there's coffee with the superintendent during the afternoon that has been scheduled a couple of times, but it's at 1:30 in the afternoon. A lot of people can't make those times. If you would like to set up a meeting like the one we were going to have last night, please be as detailed as possible and provide an outline of what will be addressed and discussed. For many of us, it was not clear that you had indeed decided to add that fourth third grade classroom, so we were preparing to advocate for the addition of that new class. Fostering open communication between the board and the community is important to us, and it's in the spirit of the district's ideals. We certainly don't want you to feel attacked by us. On the flip side, our community wants to feel comfortable to come to you with our concerns and have an open discussion and know that you're really listening to what we have to say. I feel that is more effective in a question and answer session rather than us just talking to you and getting emails in response. Open sessions like tonight are appreciated, but we encourage you to have question and answer sessions as well. Please know that we would appreciate more transparency and encourage you to share with us your communication strategies. Thanks for your time.
Thanks. Guido Nardini.
Hi, everybody. My name's Guido Nardini. I'm a Jackson dad. You've been here since 6 p.m. I will be very brief. A lot of what I wanted to say has already been said. I'm here to thank you. Thank you for adding an extra section. Thank you for agreeing that class size matters. Thank you for a group of overwhelmed teachers who now aren't teaching 30 kids. They're going to teach 23. That's a big difference. Other than that, the only thing I want to say from my little corner of South Elmhurst is an on-the-record greeting to Principal Trendle. She's brand new. The sort of incident that has gotten a bunch of a bunch of parents really engaged is a problem she inherited, not of her making, and she's the boss of our school, and we welcome her. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Bridget Butterly.
Hi, my name is Bridget Butterly. I'm an Elmhurst resident with a sixth grader at Bryan, a third grader, and a kindergartner at Jackson. And I want to start off by thanking you for your service to the district and to the community, and certainly to thank you all for being here and giving us your time. I also want to say that my husband and I have been very happy with the education our kids have received in 205 and are very grateful to live in Elmhurst. My biggest concern, what brought me here tonight, is to piggyback on what others have said, is the way the district is communicating with its stakeholders, particularly as it relates to the Jackson class size issue. Clearly, you have a ton of stakeholders that you need to worry about every day. First and foremost are the kids. They're number one, but you deal with parents, teachers, other staff. They all have a stake in what's going on at the district. And you know, it's a long list. And I know there's countless ways you communicate with all of these stakeholders every day. And I think you do a pretty good job. The district does a good job with, you know, the everyday stuff. But these big issues where you're asking people to make a change, I think we need to do better. You know, the Jackson reducing the size from 4 to 3 is a perfect example of that. I feel like the communication could be better and more proactive instead of reactive, which is what we've seen so far. In the corporate world, there's change management experts, people that, you know, help people work through big changes. It sounds kind of funny, but I'm sure you have it in the education world too, because it's important. And I think what happened, you know, last year with the class size at Jackson, last spring, the issue wasn't really discussed, and parents found out about it, and they weren't prepped for the change. You were asking them to make a huge change. Parents, the kids, the teachers, everybody, and they weren't prepped for it. And you got caught flat-footed. People got upset. They didn't know what was going on. They filled in the gaps on their own, and they got frustrated. And that's what happens. I don't know if it was the intention to not provide notice, but it appeared that way. And it was pretty unfortunate. And I understand that, you know, delivering news, you know, people aren't going to like it. Stinks. Nobody likes it. Nobody wants to get yelled at. It's not fun. But I think what would make people yell less is if they felt engaged and in part of the process early on, instead of feeling like, you know, you're just talking at them. So the decision that was made to reduce the number of sections last spring, again, you didn't really engage parents, and when we found out, we were upset. So these feelings of frustration don't really go away. And as to the most recent communications regarding the class size at Jackson, as others have said, some have been good and some have been really horrible, to the point I don't even know what the purpose of them was. Maybe to just upset people. I'm not quite sure. I agree that parents should be committed to being part of the process and stay engaged in meaningful discussions as well. It's definitely a two-way street. Ultimately, we're working towards a positive solution at Jackson, and that's wonderful, and that's a good outcome. But in the future, I would just ask the district to be more proactive instead of reactive. Thank you.
Dulce Rinelli.
Good evening. My name is Dulce Rinelli, and I have two students at Conrad Fisher. I have a kindergartner and a second grader. And the reason why I'm here is I wanted to bring to your attention, as some of my fellow parents have said, the lack of crossing guard supervision at our school. It is not only a safety concern, it is also a message you're sending to our parents and to our children that they do not matter. When things are brought up to a PTA meeting and we are told that there is nothing that the principal can do except stand out there, you're telling our kids that they don't matter. And also, you know, safety concerns should not just be on the south side of the street, where south side of Wilson, where kids are asked to cross. Also on the north side, where the cars line up for the car pickup. Kids are crossing, first graders, second graders, unsupervised, and they have to cross between not only oncoming traffic, but between parents lining up for pick up their kids on the car line. It is a big, big safety issue, and I just wanted to, you know, bring it to your attention and to ask that you work with us on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Those are all the names that I have. So again, yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. We'd like to know what's going on in the district. And we will move on to approval of board meeting minutes. we have two sets of meeting minutes, August 22nd and September 12th. Are there any changes for those two sets of minutes? Okay, hearing none, those will stand as presented. Superintendent's consent agenda. Is there any item that a board member would like to remove from the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion?
I move that the board approve the superintendent's consent agenda, items A through D.
I'll second.
Moved by Karen, seconded by John. Go ahead.
Mrs. Stufen,
Yes?
Mr. McDonough,
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio,
Yes.
Mr. Bloom,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes?
Mrs. Ebner.
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays. The motion passes. Superintendent's action items. There are 3 items. Do you want to? Approval of EIS administrator and teacher's salary and benefits report.
Correct. So this first item is just required by law. We present this to you. It includes all the compensation packages of district employees. And we then, after tonight, will post this on our website as required by law.
I move that the Board of Education approve the posting of the administrator and teacher salary and benefit report as presented.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Margaret, seconded by John. Any comments? Okay. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, that motion passes.
So the next one is related to the public hearing. It's the request to approve the budget. We have presented this over time and changed our assumptions accordingly as we had more accurate information. So we're not necessarily pleased that we have a deficit budget, but we are happy that it is looking a little bit better than we thought it might not too long ago. So we would request that you approve our budget for the 2017-18 school year.
I move that the Board of Education adopt the budget for fiscal year 2017-2018 as recommended, and that the President and Secretary be authorized to enact the resolution and certificate of authorization.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Margaret, seconded by Kara. Any other discussion? Okay. All right, we need roll call vote for this.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio,
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen,
Yes?
Mr. Bloom,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. McDonough,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner.
Yes, it's 7 ayes, no nays. That motion carries. Approval of donation.
Okay, the Sandburg School PTA has offered to donate $8,000 to purchase furniture for various locations around the building. This would be to create collaborative learning types of spaces in non-traditional classroom areas where there is room. And we will work with the school to kind of vet the furniture options and ideas that they are looking at for the building. And we would ask that you please accept that donation.
So I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Education approve acceptance of the donation from the Sandburg School PTA in an amount of $8,000 for the purchase of furniture. This donation is accepted in accordance with Policy 880, Gifts to the District.
Moved by Kara, seconded by Chris. Go ahead.
And just thank you to the PTAs who support and enhance the Elmhurst experience for our kids and, work to help make their schools a community of learners and support what the district's doing. So thank you.
Mrs. Caforio,
Yes.
Mr. Bloom,
Yes.
Mr. McDonough,
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen,
Yes.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner.
Yes. 7 ayes, no nays. That motion passes. Action on closed session, student discipline. John? Oh, sorry.
I move that the Board of Education approve the administrative recommendation for the expulsion of student A for a total of 2 calendar years commencing on September 27th, 2017 through September 26th, 2019 for the specific reasons based on the hearing officer's report and our rationale as provided in the dean's letter outlining specific reasons for the expulsion for the safety and best interests of the school and the students at York.
Okay, moved by John, second by Jim. Any discussion? Okay, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. McDonough,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio,
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen,
Yes.
Mr. Bloom,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner.
Yes, it's 7 ayes, no nays. That motion passes. Superintendent's communication.
Okay, so periodically I update you on the work we're doing at our principal meetings. Our September principal meeting, we've been working on culture. You'll see in October, all the schools are developing a culture school improvement goal. We are using the Daniel Pink book Drive as one of our resources. As we do this work, we developed some working agreements, and some of our people facilitated a little mini session on the working agreements, which has been a continuation from the administrator retreat in August. Assume positive intent of others, actively participate and listen, use data to drive decisions, be open to new ideas. Those are some of the ways that we're going to be trying to work together with our professional learning community work and our teacher committees and those types of school improvement efforts. And then the main principles in drive of autonomy, mastery, and purpose, and kind of a focus toward internal motivation and what that means to help people make meaning out of their work. So that was the September principals meeting. I also indicated to you, I think in my newsletter a couple times, about the fact that we had been accepted to present at some of the major fall conferences throughout the state this year on our work with instructional rounds. And our first presentation was last week. I've included the PowerPoint slides in your packet that will evolve a little bit in each of these conferences, but that's kind of the basic template that we're following. So you can look at that if you have a minute. This week is IASA, which is the state superintendent series of meetings, and we are facilitating a session there as well. The next item is the school district library grant program, and that is just an annual requirement. We get a grant from the state. This year's grant is $5,200. Can be used for books, audiovisual materials, and electronic resources. And I just have to report that publicly, that we've received that amount of money from the state, so I'm doing that. We had 5 Freedom of Information requests, 1 requesting specific contract, which was granted, 1 requesting specific purchase orders, which was granted, 1 requesting charges for specific speaker, which was granted, 1 requesting specific information regarding a sport, which was granted, 1 requesting specific email addresses, which was granted. And finally, a little good news item here. The Churchville Middle School, or our Churchville Middle School, is one of 3 middle schools in the state to earn positive behavioral interventions and supports, which we call PBIS, platinum level of distinction. And so this is to receive this highest level of distinction, a school must be distinguished in both number and effectiveness of available interventions as measured by student responses to these interventions. They have a staff visit. They have to follow a certain process. We have had other schools that have achieved gold status. I don't know that I believe we've never had a school achieve platinum status for their implementation of PBIS. So that is my report for the evening.
Yeah, go ahead. Do you want to?
I just want to say congratulations to Churchville and the team that supports them.
Anything else for action items? Any comments? Okay, that leads to board communications. Update from board members? It's a quiet night. Okay. Upcoming meetings, October 10th, Board of Education meeting. October 12th is a policy committee meeting at 6 p.m.
Come ready. We got some stacks of policy to go through.
And then third meeting listed is October 24th, Board of Education meeting. We've reached the end of the agenda. I'll declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.